The Teacup, submitted by Kathy Pinto. There was a couple who used to go to England just to shop in the beautiful stores. This was their 25th wedding anniversary. They both liked antiques and pottery, and especially teacups. They said, "May we see that teacup? We've never seen one quite so beautiful." As the lady handed it to them, suddenly the teacup spoke. "You don't understand," it said. "I have not always been a teacup. There was a time when I was red clay. My master took me and rolled me and patted me over and over, and I yelled out, 'Let me alone.' But he only smiled and said, 'Not yet.' Then I was placed on a spinning wheel, and suddenly I was spun around and around and around. 'Stop it, I'm getting dizzy,' I screamed. But the master only nodded and said, 'Not yet.' And then he put me in an oven. I've never felt such heat. I yelled and knocked at the door. I could see him through the opening, and I could read his lips as he shook his head and said, 'Not yet.' Finally the door opened, and he put me on a shelf, and I began to cool. Then he brushed and painted me all over. The fumes were horrible. I thought I would gag. 'Stop it,' I cried. He only nodded, 'Not yet.' Then suddenly he put me back in the oven, not like the first one. This was twice as hot, and I knew I would suffocate. I begged, I pleaded, I screamed, I cried. I would never make it. I was ready to give up. But the door opened, and he took me out and placed me on a shelf. An hour later he handed me a mirror and said, 'Look at yourself.' And I did. And I said, 'That's not me. That couldn't be me. It's beautiful. I'm beautiful. I want you to remember.' Then he said, 'I know it hurts to be rolled and patted, but if I had just left you alone, you'd have dried up. I know it made you dizzy to spin around on the wheel, but if I had stopped, you would have crumbled. I know it hurts, and it was hot and disagreeable in the oven, but if I hadn't put you there, you would have cracked. I know the fumes were bad when I brushed you and painted you all over, but if I hadn't done that, you never would have hardened. You would not have had any color in your life if you hadn't been put back in the second oven. You wouldn't have survived for long because the hardness would not have held. Now you are a finished product. You are what I had in mind when I first began with you. God knows what He is doing with us. He may be viewed as a potter working in clay, or as a vine dresser working in the vineyard of the world. However you picture Him, He will mold us, prune us, and shape us into His perfect plan and purpose for our lives.